Hello again and welcome to my home office. So since most of the world has suddenly been thrust into a work from home situation that a lot of people are not prepared for, I'm going to take this post to talk about the tips and tricks I've learned over the past 2 years of working from home that will hopefully help make it a little smoother for everybody. This is Butler SciComm. I'm Casey Butler and welcome to Learning How to Work from Home. My first tip for working from home is going to be to find your time. And this was the most important tip for me. When I first started working from home, I had just finished being a postdoc where I worked about 9:30 in the morning to about 7 o'clock in the evening. When I started working from home, I tried to work in the same time slot from 9:30 to 7. And it turns out I was just not at all productive in the morning. When I didn't have an office to go into, when I didn't have people around me who were working in the mornings, it was very difficult for me to get started working in the mornings. I was rather hard on myself. I was not very nice to myself in this time of working from home, thinking that I was just not being productive and that I was being lazy. What eventually turned this around for me was realizing that I'm just not at all a morning person and that it's okay to work at different times of the day. Now, I generally don't start work before about 11 in the morning because I know for me there's absolutely no point. And most of my most productive brain work occurs in the afternoon or into the late evening. I am much more productive at 9:30 p.m. than I am at 9:30 a.m. And so what I do now is my morning is reserved for tasks that don't take up so much mental energy. I spend it doing my emails, my billing, and tasks around my apartment or errands like going to get groceries or running to the bank. That's all stuff that I accomplish in the morning when I know that my brain is not working yet. Then when I come back in the afternoon and the evening, I'm ready to go. I can sit down at my computer, I can much more easily enter that flow state, and I'm able to get work done. What I highly suggest is not being too hard on yourself when you're working from home. If you can't keep the same hours that you kept in the office, that's perfectly okay. Find the hours that work for you and you will be much more productive. If you need help finding the best hours for you, spend your first week at home paying attention to the times when you're in that flow state, when time seems to disappear, when you're able to get a lot of work done, when you concentrate really efficiently. Those times are going to occur at the best times of the day for you. Mine are almost always in the evenings, and so that was pretty easy for me to tell. I highly recommend finding your time and not caring if it doesn't match with what a standard office time is. A huge side effect of this that I did not expect is that my sleep dramatically improved when I started paying attention to my work time. For years, I struggled with insomnia, I struggled with sleep problems, and had a difficult time going to bed at night and waking up in the morning for work. Once I started listening to my body and working at a time that was suitable for me, my sleep problems cleared up. I stay up a bit later, I wake up a bit later in the morning, and suddenly I don't have any more issues. So, what I suggest, find your time and put all of your most challenging tasks in that time slot that is best for you. Save the rest of the times of the day for all the little things, some of the mindless work, and errands or things around the house that have nothing to do with your job. Tip number 2 for working from home is to make a space. When I first started working from home, I was like, this is fantastic. I can work from bed, I can work from the couch. And while it's true, while I can work from bed, I actually get stuff done. While I can work from the couch, the problem that I noticed rather quickly was that then I was no longer able to relax in those places. It really quickly started affecting my ability to sleep in my bed or to relax or watch TV or read a book from the couch. So what I highly recommend then is make a space. Make a dedicated work area, and when you're in that work area, you work. When you are in other places, you relax and you don't mix the two. It's really good for helping create that work-life balance when you're working and living in the same location. So as you can see here slightly, I have my desk with my computer on it, this is my workspace. I don't do other stuff here. If I'm just surfing the internet, I try to do it from somewhere else, like the couch or from my phone. This space here is for work. So when I sit, I'm working. If you're working at home and there are other people at home, this can be a little bit more challenging. Try to find a work from home space that has some kind of barrier. It's best if you can go behind a door that locks, but if you can't, try coming up with any kind of creative solution. Even putting up a curtain or a blanket somewhere to separate your space from the rest of the house can make a big difference. It can also help indicate to the other people that you're living with that when you're in that space, you are working, and hopefully you'll find less distractions. I also highly suggest isolating your space as best as possible to avoid distractions. So I just talked about how setting up a barrier can help distractions with people, but for me, distractions with things were also a big deal. I used to say, oh, I'm just going to get up really quickly and grab a glass of water or a tea or any number of things, and really quickly getting up always turned into much longer than I ever anticipated. Maybe I get up to make a tea and I'm cleaning something up in the kitchen, or I go to grab a pen and I'm doing something else, making a note, I remembered something else I needed to do. So what I try to do now is keep absolutely everything I need on or around my desk. This includes slippers under the desk for if my feet get cold, a sweatshirt on the back of my chair for if I get cold. I have a glass of water that I fill, a tea that I fill, pens, notebooks, things like that, all on my desk. I find that not having to get up to get those little things saves me a bunch in distractions and having to get back into the flow again when I sit down at the computer. Next, you want to consider the ergonomics of your workstation. When I was working in a lab, so I wasn't sitting full time, or when I started working from home but was only doing part-time work, the ergonomics weren't such a big deal. I didn't notice any nagging pains or anything coming up from just spending part of my time at the desk. However, when I did switch to full-time work, this became a really big issue really fast. And so since a lot of people are suddenly switching to working from home and a desk all the time when they haven't been before, this is something you're really going to want to pay attention to. Initially for me, I just had the laptop. I personally prefer not to have the separate monitors. I find them distracting. I see how they can be very useful for a lot of people. I just minimize my distraction. But with my monitor, the problem with just the laptop then is that the monitor height is standard very low. So what I have here is I have an IKEA plastic laptop stand coupled with the back of my laptop has a Moft laptop stand that is adjustable to a couple different heights and helps bring the screen of my monitor up a little bit higher. This helped relieve a lot of the neck strain I started feeling after my first couple weeks of working full time. I was getting a lot of headaches, a lot of neck strain. Just lifting up the monitor of the laptop fixed that a lot. The next problem that I encountered though was that I got carpal tunnel syndrome in both of my wrists from working at the laptop, having it elevated and having my hands up. So the next thing I had to do was go and get myself a wrist rest. This one is a gel-filled one. It's the length of my computer, so I can comfortably rest both wrists on it. If you don't have this, if you can't get it in time, I highly suggest starting with just a towel rolled up here for underneath your wrists to prop them up a bit and help relieve that wrist strain. Next, the two things that I recommend are a comfortable chair and one that you can use to keep your feet flat on the floor. You can't really see here from my camera setup, but I'm using a standard IKEA desk with a standard IKEA dining chair. For me, this works really well. It's the perfect height that I can sit up in it and keep my feet flat on the floor. If my feet didn't touch the floor, and what I used to do when I worked in my office actually was to just take an old textbook, put it on the floor under my feet to bring the floor up to my feet so that I can sit comfortably and it was less strain on my back. These are things I highly recommend paying attention to and things that you can fix fairly easily and fairly quickly at home. But it's definitely best to take action before it becomes a problem and then you're trying to alleviate pain instead of just prevent it from happening. My fourth tip that I'm going to recommend for beginning to work from home is to, especially at the beginning, set yourself reasonable expectations for the amount of work you're going to be able to do. When I first started working from home, I somehow expected I was magically going to be working 8 hours a day, putting in concentrated work at my computer, and that's not possible, and it has never happened. I quickly realized that if I spend 8 to 10 hours a day in lab or in an office, that I was not actually working that many hours. There was a lot of distractions, talking to people, fixing equipment, things like that are not things you're going to deal with at home. I also realized relatively quickly that my hard maximum for the amount of concentrated hours I can put in at my computer is about 5. That's it. So that doesn't necessarily include lunch breaks or getting up to get tea and things, but at the same time, that is much less than I expected I was going to be able to do when I started working from home. Initially, I was again a bit hard on myself, not giving myself enough credit, but putting in 5 concentrated hours of work per day is quite a bit. The problem is, if I go over this number, I'm absolutely useless the next day. So let's say I managed to work 6 hours in one day, the next day I probably work 1, and that is not useful at all. So now I set myself reasonable expectations and hard expectations. When I hit 5 hours, I'm done working. It doesn't matter if I still have stuff to do, it doesn't matter if I wanted to do more, because I know it's better for me to be able to come back fresh the next day and start again. Now, when you start working from home, one of the problems is going to be that everything's going to be a little bit different. You're not going to be able to just sit down and get into the flow of work right away. So if you're thinking that you're going to try to work for 5 hours a day, I highly recommend that at least for your first week, cut that number back dramatically and try not to work for more than 3.5 to 4 hours each day, because it's going to be difficult at first. It's going to take some getting used to. There's going to be things that you don't expect, and they're going to come up and they're going to derail your plans. It's much better to set your expectations lower, especially at the beginning, so that you motivate yourself to keep going, keep pushing in future days. If you set yourself high or unreasonably high expectations, especially in this first week, it's going to be really demotivating and it's going to be difficult to come back in future weeks. So try to keep your expectations into a reasonable level. Think deeply about how much you can actually do sitting at your computer all day. And then, especially this first week, dial that back a bit. Give yourself a little bit of leeway. There's a lot going on right now, and it's going to be better to set your expectations a bit lower. My 5th tip for maintaining your productivity when you're working from home is to quit when you are done for the day. I mentioned this a little bit in the 4th tip, how I have a hard cutoff of 5 hours of concentrated work, and I know now that one of the best ways for me to maintain consistent productivity is to quit working when I hit that 5 hours of work. So what I highly recommend everybody do is figure out what your hard limit of work is and quit when you reach that hard limit and be done for the day. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult for you to come back day in and day out and do the same thing over and over again. So how I recommend finding this time for you, look at the way that you work. So for me, I work mainly using the Pomodoro technique. If you're unfamiliar with this technique, the standard method is to work in 25-minute chunks and take either 5 or 15-minute breaks in between to get a little bit of rest, get up and stretch. And so the way that I typically work is that I find that my first 2 sessions of the day, I don't take the break in the middle. I usually work for 50 minutes at a time and take the break only after the 50 minutes. I do that twice. And so that's almost 2 hours of work I get in with a small break in between. And then afterwards, I go to the standard Pomodoro techniques of working in 25-minute chunks with the 5 or 15-minute breaks. What I notice is that I typically shoot for about 12 of these Pomodoro sessions in a day that will reach my 5-hour concentrated work limit. And once I hit about 10, I'm starting to struggle to complete these 25-minute sessions. And so that's how I know I'm reaching the end. And on an average day, I start to struggle when I reach about 10, so I squeeze in 2 more, I get to 5 hours of work. But something to pay attention to is that there is a non-trivial number of days where I struggle when I hit a much lower number, like 8. And the thing is, some days that's because the project I'm working on is maybe not so exciting, so I'm getting a little bit bored. But some days, there's just something else going on in life, and my productivity is not as high as it should be. I need to be able to recognize that when I'm starting to struggle, I should just stop and be done for the day. Because otherwise, this affects my work the next day in the exact same way as before. So what I recommend, find whatever way you use to measure work. If it's time, if it's Pomodoro technique like I do, maybe it's word limits if you're writing or editing. Whatever you use, pay attention to when it starts getting difficult for you in that day and start to use that as your limit. When you reach that, quit, because in future days, it's going to be much more difficult. So again, I don't think it's just for your mental health, also for your work productivity. Quit when you hit your limits for the day. It will make everything in every future day much easier. So one caveat to my last tip, and what's going to be tip number 6 for your productivity, is that before a day off, you actually can work longer because you don't have to be 100% on the next day. So I know a lot of people know what I'm talking about when the day before vacation, when you're significantly more productive than any other days, you can do the same thing with your work from home. So on a Friday, maybe before the weekend, if you have enough energy, if you have a project you want to finish, go ahead and work a little bit longer on those days, because especially if you don't need your mental capacity in the following days, then it's perfectly okay to expend a little bit too much of that mental capacity, work a little bit harder. Maybe finish a project, get something done, get something off your plate. So if you have the day off, if you have the time off, then feel free to work a little bit longer, but at the same time, pay attention to this and quit when you're done if you're going to need your mental capacity. So tip number 7 on being productive when you work from home is finding a work marker that works for you. So what do I mean by work marker? A lot of freelancers, a lot of work from home people I know use time as a work marker. So they want to accomplish, say, 5 hours of concentrated work in a day, and so that is their work marker. Unfortunately for me, using that as a work marker was very detrimental to my productivity. Coming in the morning, seeing on my to-do list that I had to work 5 concentrated hours of work in that day was just physically painful for me. Looking at my time in hours was very difficult and it was detrimental to my productivity. If you find the same thing for you, it is well worth looking into different options for ways to mark how much work you want to get done in a day. Seeing that instead on your goal list is going to be a much easier on your mental space. It's really going to help with your productivity and your ability to just sit down and get to work. So what do I use for my work marker? I mentioned previously that I work using the Pomodoro technique with the 25 minutes on and then the 5 to 15 minute breaks. And so my work marker are actually Pomodoro sessions. So when I sit down in the morning and look at my to-do list, it's going to say to do 12 Pomodoro sessions on the project that I'm working on. For me, that is significantly easier to look at and to think about than having my to-do list tell me 5 hours on that project. It means the same exact thing. 12 sessions really equals 5 hours, but for me, it is much easier to look at and much easier to process mentally. So it helps me sit down and it helps me get started with my work. What I highly recommend, find the work marker that works for you. If hours works for you, great. You don't have to think about anything else. If not, maybe look into something like Pomodoro sessions like what works for me. But if that doesn't work for you either, try to be a little bit creative. If you're writing and editing, again, words is an easy one to use. Number of words written or number of words edited in a day can be really good work markers. But you can also be a little bit more creative. Do you, for instance, listen to music while you're working? Maybe a certain number of tracks. You can measure it in musical tracks, things like that. Just try to find something that doesn't make you anxious when you look at your to-do list, because it really will help you sit down and get started when you need to get to work. So my 8th and final tip I'm going to give you in this video on being productive when working from home is the tip that I found to help you get started working again when you find that you're procrastinating. I've noticed that especially when you work from home, when surrounded by all your stuff, it is so easy for me to get up and be distracted by something, be doing something else entirely, even surfing the internet, and all of a sudden, so much of your time has been derailed. You found that you've lost hours, you feel really unproductive. Everybody knows the feeling, I'm sure. So I looked for a technique that would help me avoid these big chunks of unproductivity. And the best one I found is the simplest technique I've ever heard. I never expected it would work, yet it works magically for me every time I try. What I do is when I notice that I'm procrastinating, as soon as I notice that I'm procrastinating, I count backwards from 10. When I reach 1, I start working again. And it's amazing how well it works. It completely rewires my brain, sets me up to get back into work, and even now, over a year later of using this technique, I still do it. I notice I'm procrastinating no matter what it is, count backwards from 10, turn my work timer back on, and get right back to work. Hopefully it works for you as well.